Greetings, my friends. Welcome to this week's tactics video. Today we're talking about how to do list building and army creation in the Liberator Assault Group detachment. This will give you everything you need to know to build a strong competitive list. So let's dive in to this week's tactics video. So thank you ever so much for being here, my friends. And the goals for this video are simple, right? We're going to follow a list of principles so we can build a very competitive / strong Liberator Assault Group army list. So these are the principles, and I saw something similar on Reddit, and this is sort of adapted and tweaked to give you my overview of what I would do if I was sat with a blank piece of paper and I needed to make a Liberator Assault Group list. So we're going to dive into all 8 bullet points. We're going to go over each one in a little bit of depth. But I think this gives you a pretty easy checklist to follow, right? We're going to have 4 melee threats. Super simple. We're going to have 2 range units with strength 12 or higher. Las cannons, that really means. We're going to have less than 20% of our overall points spent on characters. We're going to have 4 or 5 units that are very good at scoring. And what I mean by that is secondaries, actions, etc. We're going to have 13 distinct units, so we're going to be able to put units in different areas of the battlefield. This is going to help with scoring, but it's also going to help with like holding objectives or putting pressure. We're going to have a plan for a backfield / home objective. We're going to have a plan for strategic reserve, and then we're going to have a plan for objective holding and durability. So let's start with what 4 melee units would look like. Now, if you're playing Liberator Assault Group, you should know that every time you do a charge move, and that includes a charge move you make if it's a heroic intervention, you're going to get +2 to your strength and +1 attacks. So heroic intervention is pretty good in this detachment, especially if you've got characters that can lower the cost of heroic intervention by 1 CP. That would be your captains, right? So we want to be charging, right? And we want 4 melee units that can make the most of charging. And those units, I believe, are the Sanguinary Guard. They're probably the most reliable due to their high AP and reasonably high strength in Liberator Assault Group. The Blade Guard, they're often side an Impulsor. There's 2 characters that are great with them. The Chaplain giving them permanent +1 to wound, which stacks really nicely with Red Thirst. And the Judasars letting them fight first, I guess. So if they are charged, they potentially fight first. And there's a nice stratagem inside Liberator Assault Group that can give you more attacks and or more strength when you are charged. Yes. Jump Assault Marines are also super good in Liberator Assault Group. They are fast and cheap, and they're very good at trading. Outriders are also much improved in Liberator Assault Group. Potentially, the 3 Outriders could do 30 points of damage now. That's a lot of damage in melee at strength 7 for only an 80-point unit. Other decent picks, though. Death Company with jump packs. They're a little costly, but obviously they bring a lot of attacks. They can be strong. Terminators are slow, but they bring the most power fists we can yield. Centurions are even slower, but my god, into vehicles and monsters with their sustain 2, boy, do they hit pretty hard. In Liberator Assault Group, when they charge, they will be strength 12 twin-linked, which is very, very good. And then you've got Vanguard Veterans, and they are useful at stretch if you're just trying to round out a list and you want something that's a little bit more durable. So you need to pick 4 units from this. They don't need to all be Death Ball units. Some of them, maybe one of them, can be like a Death Ball unit, and what I mean by that is like a unit that's going to cost 300 to 400 points. The rest of them can be reasonably cheaper. Next, we're going to need 2 range units with strength 12 or higher, and in Liberator Assault Group, quite often we might find ourselves use our Oath of Moment to buff these units, right? And the units that you're going to get that have strength 12 or higher, and the 4 that we see in competitive play all the time at the moment, are Vindicator tanks. They have durability, they have blast, they have strength 14. It's a great break point for wounding enemy armor. Ballistic Dreadnoughts, cheap, long range. They got some rerolls built in, and the missiles are pretty good into some targets. Orcs don't like those 2d6 blast crack missiles, that's for sure. Predator Destructors are just great against elite infantry. They get an extra point of infantry on every weapon when they shoot infantry. They are brilliant infantry, long range on those things as well. And a Gladiator Lancer is arguably the best thing for dealing with enemy armor. Super long range, high AP, strength 14 as well on the Lancer. So a lot of power coming out of that. Decent picks, I guess, would be an Annihilator, because las cannons are always good, and Annihilator's got 2 and a twin-linked one, and a Land Raider, right? They're expensive, the Land Raiders, but they do double as a transport that can allow units to charge out of it after it is moved. So it actually gives units like Blade Guard additional strength, because they can then charge after it's moved 10 inches. And they've disembarked 3, so it gives them a lot of threat. And obviously, like, a Land Raider still has 4 las cannons on it. So definitely bringing those strength 12 or higher weaponry to bear. Right, less than 20 points on characters. And what characters should you take? Well, the top picks, I think, for Liberator Assault Group are Dante, right? He removes the need of Oath of Moment on the Sangre Guard, letting them hit on 2s. He also brings a lot of combat power with his 9 attacks, AP 3. So he is pretty much my top pick, actually. I play him in almost every game, be it Liberator Assault Group, be it Angelic Inheritors. A captain with a jump pack is cheap. He boosts your strength further on any unit he attaches to, and he opens up the free CP stratagem, which is always nice. Mephiston is a bit unreliable, I would say, but he is a good, durable lone operative that you know, like he's probably the most durable lone operative Marines can field, so he can definitely do work. Any chaplain variant is really good in Liberator Assault Group because +1 to wound stacks super nicely with +2 to strength and +1 attack. So chaplains, Terminator chaplains, regular chaplains, chaplains with jump backs, they're all good. They're all a top pick. And then any regular captain, he can get a ton of value from comboing with the cheap assault intercessors. He can get all those devastating wounds. He can get rerolls to hit and wound. So regular captains, and again, he can do stratagems for cheap. So regular captain is good as well. Decent picks, I think, are Lamartas. He's a solid leader for the Jump Death Company. The Judasaur is obviously a good leader with the potential fight first. The Sanguiner, because he can throw the enemy off with his miraculous savior ability. And then any captain. And again, you know, regular captains on foot combo super nicely with assault intercessors, but any captain that's going to give you stratagems potentially for less CP is very useful with our limited CP regeneration. So you could see a Terminator captain, you could see that Blade Guard captain. It's fine. It's a decent pick. And then I would say avoid the Sangre Priest at the moment. He has no meaningful unit he can attach to, and he's way too many points. So Sangre Priest is the big no-no in this detachment, or in this list of characters. If you are getting any value out of today's video, you should consider subscribing. It would mean ever so much to me. We're super close to 20,000. I know I've been asking for a few weeks now. This might be the last video. We might hit 20,000 this week, and then I'll shut up about asking for subscriptions for like 5,000 subscribers or something. So please consider doing that. 4 or 5 units for scoring. So your top picks for scoring are simple. It's scouts. They can be picked up and put down every turn. Arm them with 3 knives, a chainsword, and a multi-melta. A chainsword and a multi-melta? A chainsword and a missile launcher, sorry. But realistically, you're just going to pick them up and put them down in obnoxious places and do actions with them. That's what scouts are good for. Top picks as well. Assault intercessors with jump packs, right? Like, they are cheap. They will actually pack a punch. Like, they can do a lot of damage for 90 points. I think it's 28 damage they cap out at. And they're great for moving around and doing actions, right? That's another thing that they're great for. Outriders are also cheap. They do still pack a punch. They have more durability than both scouts and assault intercessors with jump packs. And when you need a unit to survive, toughness 5 can sometimes help. And they move 12 inches, so they're good for actions as well. And the impulsor are also moving 12 inches. Once they've dropped off their cargo, they become a very fast, durable scoring unit. And the enemy doesn't really want to waste their time killing impulsors. They're not easy to kill with like 11 wounds, toughness 9, 5 up invuln. They can honestly just sit on objectives and score points for the entire game. Decent picks as well. You could do the Lieutenant with the combi weapon because you can give that army-wide buff of reroll 1s to a specific objective. He also has a reactive move. He also has lone operative, so he's hard to target. You've got the Calidus Assassin, which again has uppy-downy rules, 100 points. She can fit into very small spaces because she is an individual model. And then the other thing we've been seeing more of recently is Invader ETVs, right? They're 60 points, which is not much for 8 wounds at T5, and they move pretty fast. So they can be used to, again, score actions. And if you're at that odd point at the end of your list, you can definitely use an Invader ATV to fill out the last 60 points, and it can do some actions, and it's not going to be too bad. Right, 13 distinct units, right? When you start attaching your characters to your units, you obviously lower your overall unit count. And if you're going to play lots of big blobs of killing units, this actually makes the game a little bit harder for yourself, right? Like if you're going to take 10 Death Company plus a character, 6 Angry Guard plus a character, a squad of Terminators plus a character, you're going to end up spending the best part of 1,000 points inside like 3 units. And then when you pull some secondaries, right, you can quite often pull a secondary that requires 3 different units to do an action, or more likely 2, but you do occasionally pull the one that you need to do 3. you make it much more difficult for yourself if you've got you need to do actions with 3 units, and you are less than 13 distinct units, right? And I think Liberator Assault Group is somewhat of a unique detachment in some senses, right? Because the cheap Space Marine units in Liberator Assault Group are super efficient, right? The most obvious ones I think are Jump Assault Intercessors and Outriders. They're punching well above their weight, and if you just threw 3 of both squads into your list to start with, that's only 510 points. And that's 3 units that can score really, really well and kill really, really well. In fact, it's 6 if you've included 3 of both. So these are great, cheap, reliable units for both scoring and trading. And they build in reliability to your list as well if you have multiple. And that's one of the things when we're looking at these 8 bullet points. Some units are obviously going to be able to do 2 things. You know, like Jump Assault Intercessors can do a lot of damage. They can do scoring. So having distinct units like this that can do both builds in versatility, builds in reliability, and sometimes you want to have a unit that you don't feel too bad about sacrificing, right? Like in the early games, sometimes you just have to put a unit out into the middle of nowhere, do an action, sit on an objective, and if you have to do it, I would like to do it with something that is cheap, so that like when it dies, which is probably inevitable, it's not going to hurt you all that bad, right? So that's where Jump Assault Intercessors, Outriders, potentially Scouts, potentially Impulsors, all these things start coming into play. So I've tried playing Liberator Assault Group with 12 units, and I found it quite difficult to score my secondaries well. 13 to 14 seems to be a very optimal number, and I'd advise you aim for 13 minimum, and with that magic number of 4 or 5 scoring units. Remember, killing the enemy doesn't always win you the game, and it's weird as it seems, going from 12 to 13 actually felt meaningful, and going from 13 to 14 actually felt great. Like when I had 14 units, I just felt like it was very easy for me to score. Every secondary that I pulled, I had enough stuff to do it and not really impact my overall battle plan. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Like if you've made your Liberator Assault Group list with 3 or 4 big melee threats, and you look and you only have 10 distinct units on the board, you're actually making the game much, much harder for yourself. Okay, what are you doing for your Backfield home objective, right? You're going to have to deal with it, and my top pick for this is Infiltrators, right? They're just too darn good. They can usually be hidden, and 1 squad of Infiltrators screens out damn near a quarter of the board. It's probably not a quarter, it's probably like a fifth, but it's a giant area. If you take them and spread them out 2 inches between each model, then you've got 12 inches, plus the daisy chain of 10 inches, plus 12 inches, you're screening out what is something of like a 36-inch oval at that point. So it is a massive area. That would be 24 inches wide, 36 inches long. I mean, I was going to say that I think that is more than a quarter of the board, right? Like that 1 unit for 100 points will screen out a quarter of the board. Other decent picks, I guess, could be Intercessors, right? You could stick your own field objective. If your opponent isn't deep striking, then you can move off of it and you can feel good. Scouts are good because you can pick them up and redeploy them later. But my thought in this is like, in Liberator Assault Group, right, you win the game by charging your enemies. We know that. We do a lot more damage when we're charging. You have to be charging to win with Liberator Assault Group, right? Infiltrators cost 5% of your overall points list. That's 100 points. And they remove 95% of you needing to worry about your home field objective or needing to keep units in the backfield to deal with enemy reserves. If they're daisy chained well and they're positioned well, you're just screening out your entire backfield. And I think as a new player, or even as a somewhat experienced player like I am, I would say somewhat experienced, maybe not super experienced, 40k can be like a very heavy game in terms of cognitive load, right? Like you go to a tournament, you got to play 5 games in 2 days, you're super tired, you make mistakes, you've got to remember everything, you need to remember your army, you need to remember your opponent's army, right? It's a lot to remember. So for me, putting that unit of infiltrators in the backfield just removes like a big chunk of worry or a big chunk of my cognitive power. I do not need to worry about like, oh, are those Grey Knights going to jump in 4 inches away from my deployment zone? Do I need to leave? Nah, there's none of that. It's like, plop down infiltrators in the backfield. Cool. Everything's rosy back there. So infiltrators for me remove the load from my brain, which helps me focus on my attack rather than focus on my defense. And that's what I would advise. But these are the choices, right? So I think they're well worth the 5% points cost you would pay for them. What about strategic reserves, right? So first is practice, right? Like I would say practice. and do the same in every single game, right? Like, so I decided maybe a year ago now to always put 2 units in strategic reserve, give or take, and I would do something like this, right? Like, 1 unit would be like a killie unit, like Dante plus 6 Sanguinary Guard, or it could be Death Company, it could even be Terminators, right? But 1 unit that will do a lot of killing and can be set up as a rapid ingress play, right? So basically I can place them in an obscure position 12.1 inches away from the enemy, and 12.1 inches means if you're 12.1 away, they can never declare you as a charge target, and that means in your turn you will move much closer to them, advance and charge potential as well if you need it in Liberator Assault Group, and then charge and do some sort of very strong counterplay. So I would say kill a unit in reserve every game, yes. Intent to rapid ingress in turn 2 or 3. And then whichever turn you do not rapid ingress the kill unit in, consider a second cheaper potential scoring unit, right? Like, I like jump pack intercessors because they are great into weak targets. You know, like if an enemy is left like a home field of cultists or something similar, a unit of jump intercessors with a rapid ingress threat, they'll probably still wipe 10 cultists, right? They're going to wound cultists on 2s because they're strength 6. You could give them like red thirst for or red rampage for +1 to wound, or something like that, lethal hits if you needed it. But jump intercessors are great because there's 2 options there. You use them to score, like deploy teleport homer or something, or establish locust, I think it's called now, or you use them to kill something weak. So like starting off with those 2 units, or 2 units of that type, right? 1 versatile and 1 killie in reserve every single game works really, really well in Liberator Assault Group. And it's pretty much exactly what I did when I won my GT running the Blood Angels last summer. I had Dante plus the Sanguinary Guard in reserve, and I also had a Chaplain plus 5 Death Company in reserve. So it meant like I had a super killie unit and then like a pretty damaging unit, both of which could be deployed in either sense, turn 2 or 3, and I did that every single game. So I practiced that. I'd also make a habit of doing it for like at least 10 games, and then aim to iterate on it, right? Like, when I go to the table, I want to have, like, not muscle memory, right? But, like, know exactly what I'm doing, not be worrying at the start of the game, oh, what am I putting in strategic reserve this time? No, I just want to go to the table and be like, these are my 2 units in strategic reserve. And, you know, like, I already got a plan for them. Regardless of who I'm playing, the plan stays pretty much the same. But there's a final tricky bit, right, where you're going to be able to react to your opponent, right? Like, and one of the things that I do in Liberator Assault Group, or even in other Blood Angels detachments, is, like, look at my opponent's shooting threats, right? Like, at the moment, I'm playing 2 Vindicator tanks. They do not have very long range, and so I'm not going to deploy those on the board if I feel my opponent's going to get 2 or 3 turns of shooting at them before I get into range. So that could be an example where, like, okay, my Vindicator tanks aren't going to be in range in turn 1. There's nothing for them to shoot. Maybe they should just be in reserve, right? Like, is there a specific threat I'm worried about? And if so, what am I going to deal with it? Then that would be like your third potential reserve / strategic reserve. And the key part of this is just learn by doing, right? Know the strength of your enemy units. Know the strength of your units. Test them out. It's pretty key to your success. But I would definitely have 2 units in strategic reserve and think about the third one for sure. I'm pretty confident most of my games I'm doing 3. And my 3 are currently something like Jump Assault Intercessors, something like Sanguinary Guard, something like a Vindicator tank, right? Because I think the Vindicator tank is the hardest tank to make work because it's short range. So if I can just bring it in turn 2 of the moment my target, guarantee that I do a lot of damage, works perfect for me, right? You don't really need to be rapid ingressing your tanks, right? Like, it would almost be a bad thing to rapid ingress the tanks. The tanks just come in your turn and shoot. The reason you rapid ingress is because 9-inch charges are unreliable, and rapid ingress removes the unreliability of the 9-inch charge. Alright, durability and objective holding, right? Like, one of my 5 final points, which is a tricky thing to consider, is in 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000, the game is very much a trading game, right? Like, what I mean by that is you move your stuff onto an objective, your opponent will then try and kill everything on the objective and take the objective away from you, right? So if you go second, that's great, right? The opponent moves on and you jump forward and you kill them with like a jump intercessor or a Sanguinary Guard, and then you trade for the whole game. And then sometimes if you go second, as a Blood Angels player, you can just swing at the end of the game because you trade in turn 5 and you hold all the objectives and the game's yours. But if you go first, you know, you've got to put some units out onto an objective. And those units need to survive, usually, for you to get points on the primary in your turn. So as much as we like to take loads of Sangre Guard, loads of Jump Intercessors, I think it is also important to have some units that would be seen as durable, that can like weather the storm of enemy fire and or incoming charges, right? Some of my top picks, I think, for durability are the Blade Guard, obviously because they're kind of cheap at the moment, and they've got the 4-up invuln. Impulsors, super cheap, high toughness, high wounds, they also have an invuln. Outriders are not too bad, they're reasonably cheap, point for point. Toughness 5 and 12 wounds for 80 points is pretty good. 2 OC per guy as well. Company Heroes, they are 16 wounds, which essentially with toughness 7, because -1 to wound means that they can never be wounded on 2s period, so they're kind of toughness 7. For 105 points, they're pretty good, good OC. Other durable units could be, like, we can sit on the objectives with those Vindicator tanks, they have smokescreen. We can sit on those objectives with our Ballistus Dreadnoughts, which are T10 and a 2-up save. That's the one thing that I think the Ballistus Dreadnought has maybe over, like, Predator Destructors and Annihilators. I think the Destructors and Annihilators, they're all the same points, they're all 140, might be slightly better offensively, but the Ballistus does have that 2-up save, which if you combo it with Armor of Contempt can actually be kind of meaningful on a toughness 10. So having some durability is also super important. So my advice is, usually what I'll do is I will let you guys download these slides. I'll put these on my Discord, so if you come over to Discord, you can download these slides. When you're building your next list, you can just pull up these slides, you can run through them, you can see the top picks, you can use them hopefully to help you figure out exactly what you want to do for Liberator Assault Group. And apparently I did a poll just yesterday. On out of our 4 detachment options, 70%, I stopped it at 300, well, it's still running, but I took the screenshot of the poll at 300 votes. 70% of people still think Liberator Assault Group is the best detachment for Blood Angels. So if you're struggling to build Blood Angels, Liberator Assault Group, then I hope this video will help you out. Simply build your list while comparing it to these 8 action points, and I think that should help. I hope, hopefully these slides can take you in the right direction. But if you can't, it's not a crime if you go slightly over or under on some of the points. Yeah, so like, if you need to run 5 melee threats, or you want to run 6 scoring units, or you want to, you know, it's not, this is a template. Adjust and build and practice, and all that stuff is, like, the practice is probably more important than anything else, right? Because I think, like, the way I like to do it is if I'm going to a tournament, I like to use something like this to get my template together, and then I like to play a very similar list for like 6 to 8 reps before I go to a tournament. So when I actually go into a tournament and I'm in situations, I've been in those situations before and I know how I'm going to deal with them. So that's like the final step of the puzzle. And this is a pretty different video to the sort of videos I normally make, but hopefully it's useful. And if it is, leave me in the comments whether you liked it or disliked it. I made one of these before last edition. I don't know why it's taken me so long to make it this edition, but this has been Army List Building 101. And if you want to actually see my first GT taking the Liberator Assault Group back in January, and the list that I built, and hopefully it fits pretty good or nicely into those 8 categories, you can click on that video now. If you are keen to support the channel in other ways, there's links in the video description to Patreon, which you can join for like a couple of bucks a month. Or if you're buying models in the UK, Element Games, or you're buying new models in the US, Wargame Portal, these links also exist, and every purchase on those sites does support the channel. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video, guys. Leave me a comment, and if you're not aware, every Sunday night on the channel we do look at community submitted lists, and we try and give them a bit of feedback or tips to get them moving in a positive direction. I've been John, you've been awesome for staying to the end. I will see you in the next tactics video, my friends. By the blood are we made strong. Peace.